How do you read the flop in poker based on pre-flop action? Have you ever wondered how to make sense of the flop in poker after the pre-flop action? Understanding this can really boost your game. Let's break it down step by step. First, the pre-flop action is essential. It tells you a lot about what hands your opponents might hold. Pay attention to who raised, who called, and their positions at the table. For instance, a player who raises from an early position usually has a strong hand. This could include high pairs or strong aces. In contrast, a player in a late position might be more adventurous, raising with a wider range of hands. Next, think about the pre-flop range. For an early position raiser, you might consider the top 15% of hands. This helps you narrow down what they could have. When the flop comes, you will want to compare it to this range. Now let's talk about the flop itself. It can be either dry or wet. A dry flop has unconnected low cards like King 7-2. This type of flop is less likely to hit strong hands, so if a player bets here, they might be bluffing. On the other hand, a wet flop has connected cards, like 9-8-7 with two suited cards. This flop hits a wider range of hands and can include strong draws or made hands. Combining the pre-flop range with the flop texture is key. If an early position raiser calls and the flop is wet, they could have a strong hand or a draw. This means you should be cautious. Also, consider how players act on the flop. If someone who raised pre-flop bets strongly on a dry flop, they might be representing a strong hand. But if they called from a late position and suddenly bet aggressively on a wet flop, they might be semi-bluffing with a draw. Practical tips include using your knowledge of your opponent's pre-flop range to eliminate unlikely hands on the flop. If a player only calls pre-flop with a narrow range, you can discount weak hands when reading the flop. Adjust your own strategy based on how the flop interacts with their range. If the flop likely missed them, you can apply pressure with continuation bets. Always remember that your perception of an opponent's hand should start with their pre-flop range. This helps you avoid being misled by the flop. Reading the flop based on pre-flop action allows you to make better decisions about betting, calling, or folding after the flop.